So I get this little notification on my phone. It's just the alert for our shared calendar. Usually boring stuff like dentist appointments, or when the car needs an oil change. But I'm standing in aisle 14 at Home Depot, the one with all the PVC pipes and those weird valves, just staring at my screen. I had his Google Maps timeline open in one tab and his work schedule in another. The timestamps they don't add up. The schedule says he was in a 4-hour strategy meeting in the city. But the timeline? It has him sitting in a strip mall parking lot, 3 towns over for 2 hours and 15 minutes. I actually felt nauseous, like I had to take a second to breathe, so I wouldn't just pass out right there in the aisle. I just kept scrolling timeline, schedule, timeline. I stood there for a while. One of the wheels on my cart was sticking, which was driving me crazy, but I barely even noticed. I'd only come in to get a replacement washer for the kitchen sink, because the leak was finally warping the cabinet. I've told him about it for 6 months. 6 months, that's just how it is. My life is basically a long list of things that only happen if I remember them. Like last Tuesday, I spent 45 minutes on the phone with the cable company, because some streaming service we haven't even opened since 2022 charged us for a full year, and the one who deals with the iCloud storage warnings too. I spent a whole Sunday morning clearing out 10,000 emails, just so the photos would sync, while he's just sitting in the living room asking me where the remote is. Aaron, where's the remote? It's on the coffee table, Mark. I look there, I don't see it, and it's right there, literally on top of the coaster. I have to actually get up, walk over and move it 2 inches so he can find it. Same thing with his golf shoes. Every day they're just dumped in the middle of the mudroom. Not in the rack, not by the door, just in the way. I move them every single morning. So I'm in aisle 14, thinking about the golf shoes and the iCloud stuff, and the grain-free dog food I had to go back to PetSmart for twice because he forgot. It was the only kind the dog could eat. Then I look back at the phone. Google Maps doesn't just forget where you were. I didn't even buy the washer. I just left the cart in the aisle and walked out. When I got home, Mark was in the kitchen, leaning against the counter and eating a piece of cheese straight from the block. "Did you get the part?" he asked. "No," I said, "I forgot." "Seriously, you forgot?" He didn't even look at me. "I told you we should've just called a plumber." "But no, you wanted to save $50? I just stared at him. All I could think about was that strip mall and those 2 hours. "How was the meeting?" I asked. "Fine," he said. "Long, boring. You know how Miller is, he just drones on about Q3 projections for an hour exhausted. I think I'm just gonna crash for a bit." "The meeting was in the city." "Right. Yeah. Why?" "Nothing," I said. "Just wondering." He shrugged and walked away, leaving the cheese and the knife right there on the granite. I didn't clean it up. I just watched him go down the hall. The next few days were a mess. Just the usual stuff. I had to pick up his dry cleaning that had been sitting there for a month, because he forgot the date. Then I'm dealing with the neighborhood group chat, which is honestly a nightmare if you've never dealt with an HOA. Just save yourself the stress. Because there's some huge fight over who gets to host the 4th of July party. Mrs. Gable wants it at her place, but she has a tiny yard and a dog that bites ankles, so everyone is privately messaging me to convince her to let us host instead. And the whole time I'm just watching him, I started noticing things. Little things. He started taking his phone into the bathroom when he showers. He never did that before, he always left it on the nightstand. Now it's practically glued to his hand. And he's suddenly into wellness. He starts taking these long walks to clear his head from work stress. I didn't say anything. I just kept mental logs. I was exhausted, but it was that kind of exhausted where you can't actually sleep because your brain won't shut off. Then we had the graduation party. Our daughter Chloe graduated from college, and obviously I handled everything. Catering, the tent, flowers, the guest list. Mark's big contribution was helping me carry coolers from the garage to the patio, which mostly just meant him complaining that they were too heavy. "I don't know why we needed the big ones," he said. "Seems like overkill. We have 40 people coming, Mark." "Right, but do they all really drink that much?" I just ignored him. The party was in full swing. Music playing, kids running around. The food was actually decent. I was pouring more lemonade when I realized I needed extra napkins from the hall closet. I went inside, walked past the mudroom, where his golf shoes were, of course, right in the middle of the floor, and headed for the closet. As I reached for the napkins, I saw his light windbreaker on the hook, the one he wore on those wellness walks. I don't even know what came over me. I reached into the pocket. I thought it would be a receipt, or maybe a gum wrapper. Instead, my fingers hit something small and hard. I pulled it out. It was a tiny velvet jewelry box, like earrings-ized. I opened it. Diamond studs. They aren't my style. I hate studs. I only wear hoops, and they weren't for Chloe. She's had her own earrings since she was 2. And she wouldn't just take a surprise gift like that without telling me. I was just standing there in the hallway, the sound of the party muffled by the walls, holding these things. Then my phone pinged in my pocket. It was a notification from the shared iPad in the living room. Since we share the account, I could see the preview. It was a message from a contact saved as Jen Marketing. I didn't move. I could hear Mark laughing outside on the patio, telling some story to his brother sounding exactly like the man I've spent 25 years taking care of. I slowly closed the box and put it back in the pocket. Then I grabbed the napkins and walked back outside. Mark looked up and smiled. "Took you long enough," he said. "Where were the napkins?" I stood there for a second, holding the napkins, staring at him. The party was still going on behind. Memi's sister-in-law was laughing at something, and the ice machine was humming. But I didn't say anything. I walked over to the trash, dropped the napkins, and went to the mudroom. I grabbed my windbreaker and went back out to the patio. Mark was by the grill, talking to his brother about some new hybrid lawnmower. I walked right up to him and held out the velvet box. "What's this?" I asked. Mark stopped talking. He didn't even look at the box at first. He looked at me, then back at his brother. "What's what?" "The stuff in your pocket, Mark." His brother looked at the box, then at Mark. It was one of those awkward silences where you can hear the neighbor's dog barking a few houses down. Mark finally took the box, but he didn't look surprised. He sighed. "I was going to give those to you for our anniversary," he said. "Anniversary was in March," I said. "It's June, right?" "Well, I wanted to surprise you. I was waiting for the right moment. You always rush everything." "I wanted it to be a thing." "And Jen from marketing?" I asked. "The one messaging you on the iPad." Mark shifted his weight. He looked toward the house, then back at me. "Jen's a colleague. Erin were working on a project. She probably sent a reminder about a meeting." "Why are you checking the iPad? You spying on me now?" "I wasn't spying. The notification popped up." "Look," he said, lowering his voice to sound like the reasonable one. "You've been stressed with Chloe's party. You're exhausted. You're looking for things to be upset about. Give it a rest." I stared at him. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I took the box back. "I don't like studs," I said. "You've known me for 25 years. I only wear hoops." He shrugged. "I thought you'd want to try something different." "I can take them back." "God, I can't even do something nice without it." Turning into an interrogation. Then he walked away. He didn't even finish the conversation. He went back to talking about the lawnmower. The rest of the night sucked. I spent 3 hours cleaning. I was the one scrubbing the BBQ grill, packing up leftover potato salad, and making sure the rental tent guys didn't leave steaks in the grass. Mark helped by carrying trash bags to the curb, but he ripped 2 of them, so I had to get a broom to sweep up spilled beer cans and napkins. "I told you we should have gotten the heavy-duty bags," he said, leaning against the garage door. "These ones are garbage." "I bought the ones you liked," I said. "Whatever." The next morning I was up at 6 a.m. couldn't sleep. I spent an hour in the kitchen staring at the dishwasher. The filter was clogged again, because he always puts plates in without rinsing them. So I had to take the whole thing apart and scrub it with an old toothbrush. While I was doing that, I kept thinking about those studs. I'm not a detective, but I couldn't let it go. I waited until he went to the gym, which he does 3 times a week, though he spends half the time in the sauna. And I opened the iPad messages. The contact was Jen Marketing. I scrolled back. "It one's about work, can't wait for Tuesday," she'd written. "The place with the red umbrellas." "In," he'd replied. "Erin thinks I'm at a strategy meeting. She's oblivious." I sat there. Oblivious, that's what he called me. I stayed on the kitchen stool, the damp dishwasher filter still in the sink, and I read they'd been talking for months. Not just sex, but the usual stuff. Complaining about pressure at home. How he felt stifled. How I was too focused on the logistics and didn't leave room for spontaneity. I almost laughed. Too focused on logistics. I renewed his passport last year because he couldn't find the form, even though it was bookmarked in his browser. I didn't confront him again. Not yet. I knew he'd just tell me I was crazy or stressed. He's good at that. It makes you feel like you're the one with the problem. So, I started looking through things. I went into the home office and found his filing cabinet. He's not actually organized. He just shoves stuff into folders and hopes for the best. I found a work expenses folder with receipts for lunches and dinners that weren't business meetings. There was a charge for a boutique hotel in a town 2 hours away. The date matched one of those long walks he took to clear his head. That next week was a blur. I was still doing everything. I spent 3 hours on Thursday fighting with the insurance company over a cracked windshield. I went to the dry cleaners to pick up 3 of his suits that had been sitting there for a month. I even spent an evening coordinating the neighborhood 4th of July block party because Mrs. Gable's dog was too aggressive to host. And the whole time I was gathering evidence. I checked the bank statements and found a recurring charge for some weird movie app. Mark hates art house movies. He likes action and sports. "Hey, did you sign up for some movie app?" I asked him one night while he was on the couch. "What?" he said, not looking up from his phone. "This charge on the account, $12.99 a month." "I don't know. Aaron, maybe a free trial expired. Why are you obsessing over $12? It's kind of weird." "I'm not obsessing, I noticed it." "You notice everything," he said. "It's exhausting. Can you let it go?" "I've had a brutal day. I want to relax." I went into the mudroom and moved his golf shoes for the 100th time. I moved them 2 inches to the left and stood there looking at them. The marketing gen messages kept coming. He started deleting them, but he wasn't doing a great job. He'd delete her texts, but he'd forget to delete his own replies. "I'll be home late Tuesday," he texted. "Miller wants another deep dive into the projections." I knew where he was going. The place with the red umbrellas. I didn't cry. I wasn't even sad. I felt grossed out. I spent the afternoon organizing the pantry, throwing out expired canned peaches and fixing the spices. Because if I didn't do something with my hands, I thought I might break something. On Tuesday, I didn't tell him I knew. I made him a sandwich, wrapped it in foil, and told him to have a good meeting. "Thanks, honey," he said. He kissed my cheek. He actually kissed my cheek. After he left, I went to the garage. I found the spare key to the guest room. The room had turned into a gym that he never uses. I went inside and pulled out an old suitcase from the top shelf. I didn't pack clothes. I took a folder and put every receipt, every screenshot, and the bank statements in it. I organized them by date. I used a highlighter to mark the differences between his meetings and where he actually was. I was halfway through the folder when I heard the front door open. It was only 10 a.m. "Aaron?" he called out. "I forgot my laptop charger." I stood there in the gym holding the highlighter, staring at the door. I'm literally shaking while typing this. But I need to get it all out. I just kicked my husband and his best friend out of my house. It all started this morning. I had this folder of documents hidden under some old yoga mats in the guest room, and Mark walked in right as I was shoving it away. He didn't even notice. He was just spiraling, because he couldn't find his phone charger. He was scanning the dresser, knocking over coasters it just put out, complaining that he was going to be late for a meeting, and that things just disappear in this house. He finally found it hanging off the nightstand, didn't even say thanks, and slammed the door on his way out. Once he was gone, I pulled the folder back out. The stuff about marketing Jen was already disgusting. But I started digging through the bank statements again. I noticed these weird transfers, not like dinner dates, but $5,000 every 3 months going to an account with no name. I spent a few hours just spiraling, going down a rabbit hole. We have a shared password, so I eventually stumbled onto a separate email Mark had set up. The sent folder had everything. The money wasn't even going to Jen. It was going to Brian and Brooks. Brian has been Mark's friend since college. He's been at every Christmas party, every vacation. The guy literally has a key to our back door. He's always the one telling me I'm too good for Mark, whenever he's trying to be charming. I just stared at the screen. The emails weren't about an affair. They were about some venture, a land flip in Arizona, some guaranteed return on desert land that was supposed to become a resort. I started doing the math on a legal Padawan, with my grocery list on the back end. I actually felt sick. He'd drained nearly $100,000 from our joint savings, our retirement, the money we were using for house renovations, and helping our daughter Chloe with her student loans. I had to put my head between my knees, because the shock was just physical. I spent the rest of the afternoon in a total daze. My HOA president, Sarah, called me 3 times about some stupid dispute over where the portable toilets for the block party were going. I spent 20 minutes just nodding and agreeing to move them 10 feet to the left while I stared at the number 112,000 written in red ink on my pad. I waited until Friday. I knew Brian was coming over because Mark invited him for drinks and the game. I spent the day prepping, making pigs in a blanket and those cocktail sausages Mark likes. I even bought a bottle of that expensive smoky scotch Brian loves. I was just going through the motions, cleaning the mudroom and putting his golf shoes in the rack, knowing he'd just kick them back into the middle of the floor the second he walked in. When they arrived, they were laughing like teenagers. Brian gave me one of those big hugs and started talking about how he'd been craving my dip all week. Mark was right behind him, tossing his keys on the counter right next to the fruit bowl where they don't belong. Mark started complaining about his boss Miller and how he's the easiest target at work. Poor you, I said. He stopped mid-beer and looked at me. What's with the tone? Nothing, I said. Just thinking about the budget. Mark shifted his weight. Budget? What budget? We're fine, Aaron. Stop stressing. Brian, tell her to stop stressing. Brian laughed, but it sounded forced. Come on, Aaron. Live a little. Mark's got it all under control. I walked over to the coffee table, set down the scotch, and pulled a printout of the transfer to Brian's account out of my pocket. I just laid it flat on the table between them. It got dead quiet. Brian didn't move. Mark looked at the paper, then looked at me. What is this? Mark asked, using that reasonable voice he uses when he wants me to feel like I'm overreacting. It's a transfer. Mark, $5,000 to Brian, I said. Mark actually sighed. He looked at Brian, then back at me. Look, I was going to tell you it's investment. I told you. I was diversifying our portfolio. You never told me that, I said. You told me you were in strategy meetings. It's the same thing. He snapped. Why are you spying on the accounts? This is exactly what I'm talking about, Brian. The hovering. I can't even manage our money without her breathing down my neck. Manage our money? I asked. You stole $100,000, Mark. Brian finally jumped in. Now, Aaron. Let's not use words like stole. It's a loan. The Arizona land is a sure thing. We're just in a liquidity crunch. You'll get it all back, plus a dividend. I looked at Brian, the man who had sat at my dinner table for 10 years. Is that why you're helping him with Jen? I asked. Mark froze. Brian's eyes went wide. What? Mark snapped. What are you talking about? I saw the messages, I said. I know about Jen. I know about the place with the red umbrellas. And I'm guessing Brian's the one who told you it was okay to blow off some steam while you were spending my retirement money. Mark's face went pale, then blotchy red. He stepped toward me. You've been going through my private messages? This is insane, and you've completely lost it. You're acting paranoid. Not paranoid, I said. I have the receipts. I have the bank statements. So what? Mark yelled. It's my money too. It was our money, I corrected. And you lied every single day for 2 years. You let me worry about the iCloud storage and the cable bill, while you were handing over 5 figures to your buddy for a patch of dirt in the desert. Brian stood up. Look, Aaron, let's just all calm down. Maybe we can look at the projections together. Shut up, Brian, I said. I didn't scream, I just said it quietly. It was the first time in 25 years I'd ever spoken to him like that. Mark tried one last time, shifting back to that soft, manipulative voice. Aaron, honey, I did this for us. I wanted to give us a better life. I didn't want you to worry until it was a success. You didn't want me to worry, I said. Or you didn't want me to tell you it was a stupid idea. That's not fair, he said. Fair? I looked at the table. The scotch. The food. I spent all day making this. I spent my entire life making sure you didn't forget your charger, or your golf shoes, or your passport. I felt the heat behind my eyes, but I didn't cry. I was just too tired. I want you out, I said. Mark blinked. What? I want you and Brian out of my house, right now. You can't just kick me out of my own house, Aaron, he said, that condescending edge coming back. Stop being dramatic. I don't care how it works, I said. Get out. Brian started backing toward the door. Maybe we should just go for a walk and clear our heads, Mark. Let things cool down. Mark didn't move. He just stared at me, waiting for me to blink, waiting for me to be the one who fixes everything again. I didn't. I just walked over to the mudroom, grabbed his golf shoes, ones he'd left in the middle of the floor, and threw them at his chest. Go, I said. Mark looked down at the shoes, then back at me. He didn't say anything. He just turned around and walked out, Brian following right behind him. I stood there for a minute in the living room. I looked at the platter of sausages, still sitting on the table, walked into the kitchen, and dumped the whole thing in the trash. He hadn't even pulled out of the driveway before I was back in the kitchen, scrubbing the counter where the scotch bottle had been. I kept scrubbing. Like if I did it hard enough, the last couple of years would actually go away. The kitchen light had been flickering for weeks too. It was driving me crazy. I really need to change that bulb. It's one of those weird LEDs that doesn't just burn out. It just stutters like a bad movie. And the grout in the corner is starting to yellow. I don't even know what we used to mop with. First thing I did was call my cousin Sarah, not the Hoa Sarah, my actual cousin who's a family law attorney. I didn't cry or anything. I told her, Mark stole $100,000 and he's having an affair. I need to know how to freeze the accounts before he realizes. I saw the transfers. Sarah told me to stay calm and document everything. I'd already done that. I spent the next 4 hours in the guest room with a legal pad making a list. Every joint account, every credit card, every automatic payment. Wait, was it a joint account or just a linked one? No, definitely joint. I found a recurring charge for some fitness app Mark hadn't used since 2019, and some niche horror channel he probably signed up for during one of those strategy weekends. I canceled them both. Petty maybe, but whatever. Next morning my phone starts blowing up. First, a text from Mark at 6:15 a.m. Where's my blue dress shirt? The one for the quarterly review? I can't find it. I didn't reply then. Aaron, seriously. This is childish. Tell me where the shirt is and we can talk like adults. I'm sure we can work this out if you stop being so dramatic. I looked at the screen. Funny how he couldn't find a shirt that was literally hanging right there in the closet, but he could find a way to hide $100,000 in some land flip. I blocked his number, for good. Then he started calling from Brian's phone. I answered, because I wanted to hear him squirm. Look, Mark said. And he had that voice, that condescending tone he uses when he thinks I'm just emotional. I know. You're upset. I get it, but you're acting irrational. I can't be kicked out of my own home because of a misunderstanding about an investment. We need to sit down and look at the numbers. You're probably misreading the statements. I'm not misreading a wire transfer to Brian's personal account, Mark, I said. It was a bridge loan, he snapped. Brian was helping me set it up. If you'd listen instead of playing detective, you'd see what I'm doing. You've always been too small-minded about money. That's why I had to do it behind your back. I knew you'd just say no. Because you're afraid of risk. Afraid of losing. Our retirement. Because you wanted to play mogul with your college buddy, I told him. Don't call me again unless it's through Sarah. I hung up and went to PetSmart. My dog gets these weird rashes if we switch brands, so I have to get the expensive grain-free stuff. God, I hate the layout of that store. They move the treats every single time I visit, and the aisles are always blocked by some oversized bag of litter. I spent 10 minutes just trying to find the dental chews. While I was in line, I saw Mrs. Gable from the Hoa. Oh, honey. I heard the most dreadful thing, she said, leaning in. Is it true? Is Mark staying at a hotel, not in the house? Yes, I said. I didn't give her anything else. I shifted the heavy bag of dog food in my arms. Well, I'm so sorry, men these days, just no stability. But listen, about the block party, still need the permit for the bounce house. Can you still handle that? I looked at her. I'd spent 3 years handling the permits, the food, the disputes over potato salad, all that. No, I said. I can't. Oh well, maybe Mark can do it? He's usually so helpful with the logistics. Mark can't find his own dress shirts. Mrs. Gable, I think he's got the bounce house covered. I walked out of there feeling, I don't know, lighter. The next 2 weeks were just a headache. Mark tried the I don't know how to do this route for a while. He'd just emails through Brian, asking where the spare key to the shed was, or complaining that he didn't have his passport for a work trip. I forwarded every single one of those to my lawyer. Sarah told me to keep a log of it. One Tuesday he actually showed up. He didn't even knock. He walked up the driveway while I was bringing in the mail. He looked tired, which was kind of funny, because I'd been exhausted for a decade. "I need my things, Aaron," he said. No apology. He didn't even mention the money. "I can't keep living out of a suitcase at Brian's. I want my clothes and my golf clubs." "I've already packed them," I said, pointing to the garage. "Everything is in boxes. Labels are on the side. Your clubs are in the back." "You packed my things," he sounded offended. "You probably messed everything up. You probably threw away something important." "I used the heavy-duty bags, Mark. The ones you said were too expensive last month. Everything is there." He walked into the garage and started rummaging through the boxes. He stopped and looked at me, his face twisting. "You're really doing this? Over some money and a few texts? Do you have any idea how this looks?" "People are talking, Aaron. They're saying I'm a fraud." "Well, you did steal $100,000, I said. "That tends to make people think you're a fraud." "It was an investment," he yelled. "I was trying to build something for us. Why can't you be supportive for once? Why do you always have to be the one who's right?" "Because, in the one who actually does the math, Mark, you're a thief. Just get your shit and leave." He stood there for a second, trying to figure out how to flip the script. He started to say, "I think your stress is really affecting your perception of." Get your boxes and go," I interrupted. "I have a call with the insurance company in 10 minutes about the roof, and I don't have time for your stressed speech." He left, but he knocked over a stack of bins on his way out, spilling his old college trophies across the floor. He didn't even stop to pick them up. I didn't touch them. I waited until he drove away. Then I dragged the whole mess out to the curb for the bulk trash pickup. Things fell apart after that. Brian wasn't just Mark's best friend. He was the one who managed a lot of the informal investment circles in our community. He'd been encouraging other people to put money into that Arizona land flip too. I didn't post a long Facebook status or anything. I told Sarah I wanted to make sure my claim for the stolen funds was documented, and that I wanted to notify the authorities. Once the legal papers were filed, word got out. Not through me, but through court records and gossip. Turns out Mark wasn't the only one diversifying with Brian. A few other guys from the office had put in money, thinking Brian was a genius. When the resort turned out to be a patch of scrubland with no water rights and no zoning permits, the strategy meetings became depositions. I remember getting a call from a woman named Linda. One of the other investors. She was sobbing. "Aaron, I can't believe Mark did this," she wailed. "He told me it was a sure thing," he said. "He'd already put in $100,000 of his own money." "He did," I told her. "He used mine to do it." I didn't feel bad for her, but I didn't feel like I'd won either. I was just really tired. I spent the rest of that afternoon deleting 10,000 unread emails from my iCloud. The storage warning had been popping up for months, and I finally just clicked delete all. Honestly, most of them were just newsletters from stores I haven't visited since 2014, and those annoying "your order has shipped" notifications from things I bought years ago. It took forever to load the page. The divorce was finalized 6 months later. It wasn't a big battle because Mark had nothing left. Brian's venture had collapsed completely, and Mark was facing a mountain of debt. He tried to negotiate for the house, claiming he'd contributed to the mortgage for 25 years. Sarah handled it. Between the theft and the affair, the judge wasn't feeling generous. I kept the house. I got a significant portion of the remaining assets, and Mark left with exactly what he'd brought into the marriage: expensive golf clubs and a very expensive lesson. The last time I saw him was at the final signing. He looked older. His hair was thinner, and he was wearing a suit that looked like it hadn't been pressed in a week. He didn't have that reasonable voice anymore. He just sounded defeated. "I really thought it would work, Aaron," he said, looking at the papers. "I really did." "I know you did, Mark," I said. "That's the problem. You're just gonna move on, aren't you?" he asked. "You'll just figure it out." "Probably," I said. "I'm actually pretty good at it." He looked like he wanted to try and make me feel like the cold one, but I didn't give him the chance. I stood up, took my copy of the decree, and walked toward the door. "Oh, and Mark?" I stopped and turned around. "What?" "The auto renewal for the horror movie channel expired yesterday." "I didn't renew it." I walked out to the parking lot. I drove home and spent the evening doing boring things. I folded the laundry. I scrubbed the baseboards in the hallway. I made a list of all the things I wanted to change about the house. Now that I didn't have to worry about someone leaving their golf shoes in the middle of the mudroom, I sat down on the couch with a glass of wine and looked at the living room. It was quiet. Not that tense kind of quiet I'd lived with for years, just quiet. Anyway, exhausted. Not sure what's next, but at least the house is finally still.